Welcome to Impatient History, the history of telling time, Episode 8. I'm the Impatient Historian. For the most part, people in the Middle Ages called any time-telling device an horloge, an hour teller. These days, we call timepieces clock. Why? I'll get to that in a moment. In Episode 7, we discussed the importance of accurate timekeeping for monks and Muslims to ensure the timely performance of daily prayers. Water clocks, sundials, and astrolabes helped people keep accurate time, but in the 14th century, the West began transitioning to the use of mechanical clocks that operated without water, sun, or stars. How did mechanical clocks come about? For a long time, horologists had endeavored to design a device that used perpetual motion, a self-regulating driving mechanism. Water clocks required constant maintenance, and sundials had their obvious limits. In the 13th century, there was a breakthrough in clockmaking with the invention of a reliable escapement. An escapement is a device that enables continuous controlled movement and is also the source of that familiar clicking noise that we associate with mechanical clocks. There are many different designs for escapements, but the basic parts are the same. The first mechanical clocks used the verge and foliot mechanism. The verge escapement comprised a crown wheel, foliot, weights, and pallets fitted to a shaft. Additional shafts and wheels are added to create a clock that signifies the time by chiming a bell at regular intervals. And that's where the word clock comes in. Our word clock originated in the Latin clocca, or bell. Clocks sounded a bell or gong to indicate the hour or the passing of time. While sundials certainly had faces, early mechanical clocks generally did not, so you knew what time it was when the bell sounded. Mechanical clock technology developed quickly amongst talented clockmakers in Europe. Not long after the escapement designs were mastered, clocks were made with spectacular displays, and they did much more than just sound out the hour. In fact, clock faces showed the hour, moon phases, constellations, and could boast figurines that came out of little doors. Back to monasteries. The monastery of St. Albans in England had a water alarm clock in the 12th century and probably beyond. In the 14th century, the abbot of St. Albans, Richard of Wallingford, who was a mathematician, astronomer, and horologist, designed a remarkable mechanical clock for the monastery. This clock did everything but the monk's laundry. It indicated the phases of the moon, showed the sun's, moon's, and planets' path across the sky, displayed the ebb and flow of the tide in London, predicted lunar eclipses, and yes, chimed out the equal hours of the day, with chimes for the numbers of hours from 1 to 24. Note that Wallingford's clock chimed the equal hours. Remember from Episode 4 that the ancients had generally divided daylight and nighttime into 12 hours each. Since the length of the day and the night fluctuated throughout the year, so did the length of an hour, and we call these the unequal hours. Initially, Europeans had adopted the ancient practice of dividing daylight into 12 hours. But with the spread of mechanical clocks in the late Middle Ages, Europeans gradually transitioned from keeping the unequal hours that depended on the sun to keeping 24 hours of equal length. That is, 24 60-minute hours. Back to Wallingford's clock. Being the genius that he was, Wallingford accounted for this transition in timekeeping, and his clock at St. Albans also showed the unequal hours. It even showed true solar time, which differs from clock time by up to 16 minutes throughout the year. You can see reconstructions of this remarkable clock in the Whipple Museum in Cambridge and at St. Albans in England. Still not impressed with medieval clockmakers? Another remarkable clock was built in the 1350s at Strasbourg Cathedral. 59 feet high and 25 feet wide, it originally boasted a mechanical rooster that, at the noon hour, opened its beak, stuck out its tongue, and spread and flapped its wings. No longer attached to the clock, the rooster can be seen today in the Historical Museum of Strasbourg. Clockmakers continued to research, test, and develop new means of powering the escapement in mechanical clocks. Early mechanical clocks were generally accurate to within 15 minutes in a day. Spring-driven clocks were made as early as the mid-15th century, and the development of the spiral spring in the 17th century led to even more accurate timepieces. Amongst his other accomplishments, Galileo designed an instrument using a pendulum to measure pulse rates in medical patients, and near the end of his life, he suggested that the pendulum could be used in clocks. But the first known constructed pendulum clock was built on a design made by the Dutch astronomer Christian Huygens. A pendulum is a weight suspended from a fixed point, and Huygens developed a way to connect the pendulum to a mechanism that would move the clock's hands. Pendulum clocks are ingenious and were accurate to under minutes in a day. Some were accurate to mere seconds. And pendulum clocks aren't a relic of the past. Big Ben, the bell in the clock tower of London, first sounded in 1859 and still operates. The clock runs on a giant 4.4-meter pendulum. And to this day, a certain type of pendulum clock is still manufactured and sold as an impressive piece of furniture for many homes. We know it as the grandfather clock. That's enough for now. Come back for episode 9, when we'll look at the origin of the week. Thanks for watching Impatient History, the history of telling time.